The world was shaking. People didn't trust money anymore. Banks were scared. Investors were confused. And everywhere, one word spread fast: gold. In less than a year, the price of gold jumped higher than ever before. From $2,600 to almost $4,000. A rise the world hadn't seen in 46 years. What happened? Why did everyone suddenly run to buy gold? Was it fear? Was it greed? Or was it the start of something much bigger, the end of the dollar's power? This is the story of the Gold Rush 2025. A real story of politics, panic, and power. Told in simple English, for every learner who wants to understand the world. Chapter 1. The sky turns golden. The world woke up in shock. Something strange was happening. Gold, that old quiet metal, was suddenly screaming. In January 2025, 1 ounce of gold was about $2,620. A good price, yes, but nothing new. Banks said maybe it would rise a little, maybe reach $2,800 by the end of the year. Normal, calm, predictable. But the calm didn't last. By October, the same ounce was almost $4,000, 50% up. A record not seen for 46 years. The charts looked crazy, a golden mountain growing higher and higher. People didn't understand. Why was everyone suddenly buying gold? Rich people, poor people, banks, countries. Even normal families in small towns were running to jewelry shops. It felt like a fever, a gold fever. And every day the price jumped again. Ashraf Ibrahim, the economic reporter, looked at the screen in silence. The numbers were unreal. "What's going on?" he said quietly. He had seen many market storms before, oil, tech, crypto, but never one like this. News broke everywhere. The biggest gold rally in modern history. Investors flee from the dollar. Trump pressures the Fed. Something big was moving under the surface. At first, people blamed politics. In July, President Donald Trump shouted on social media. He called Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, a fool, a sleeping snail. He wanted lower interest rates, cheap money, to make the economy look strong again. But the Fed said no. Powell and his team refused to play politics. They wanted to keep the system stable, even if Trump was angry. The fight became public. Markets started to shake. Investors asked, what if Trump fires the Fed leaders? What if he controls the bank himself? Fear spread faster than any virus. And when fear rises, gold shines. In just 4 weeks, billions of dollars moved into gold funds. Everyone wanted safety. Everyone wanted something real. Not digital numbers, not government promises, but metal. Cold, heavy, shining metal. Banks that used to keep 2% of their money in gold started to double, even triple it. They said, "This is our shield." Even Morgan Stanley advised clients to keep 20% of their portfolios in gold. 20, a number nobody had ever said before. If even a small part of the world followed that advice, trillions of dollars would flood into the gold market. And that's exactly what started to happen. By September, traders couldn't keep up. Every morning the price changed before breakfast. Some people made fortunes in a week. Others were too slow. They watched the train leave the station. TV channels showed crowds in front of gold shops. One man said, "I don't care about profit. I just want something safe for my family." Another whispered, "If the banks fall, at least I'll have gold." Fear became stronger than logic. Even governments joined the race. Central banks were buying more than 1,000 tons a year. They were replacing paper with metal. And the more they bought, the higher the price climbed. By now, the sky was golden. But beneath the shine, the world was shaking. People started asking new questions. If everyone is buying gold, who will be left to buy next? Can the price rise forever? Or is this another bubble waiting to explode? No one knew. Not the traders, not the experts, not even the economists on TV. Ashraf looked again at the numbers. They didn't make sense anymore. He whispered to himself, "Something is broken, and gold is only the mirror." Outside, the sun set over the city. Its light touched the windows, turning everything gold. But behind that beauty, a storm was forming. Chapter 2. The Trump Pressure. The camera moves to Washington, a city full of flags, microphones, and noise. Inside the White House, the pressure is rising. President Donald Trump is angry, very angry. The economy is slowing down. Stock markets are nervous. And gold, the enemy of every strong dollar, is shining too bright. Trump walks into a meeting room. He slams his hand on the table. "I want lower interest rates," he shouts. "The Fed must act now." But across the city, at the Federal Reserve Building, Chairman Jerome Powell sits calm, serious, cold. He looks at the data, not at the politics. Unemployment, inflation, growth, the numbers don't lie. And the numbers say, don't cut the rates yet. Powell believes in independence. The central bank must stay free from political hands. But Trump doesn't believe in waiting. He believes in winning. The clash begins. Day after day, Trump attacks Powell on social media. He calls him a sleepy snail. He says Powell is destroying America's power. In July 2025, the fight reaches its peak. Trump sends a letter to Lisa Cook, one of the Fed's board members. He fires her, just like that. He says she cheated on some papers, but everyone knows the real reason. She voted against Trump's wish to cut the rates. For the first time in history, a U.S. president tries to remove a Federal Reserve official. The news hits the markets like lightning. Investors panic. If Trump can fire one member, maybe he can fire them all. Maybe the Fed will no longer be free. Maybe the dollar will lose its heart, its trust. The courts move fast. Lisa Cook goes to court and wins her case. The judge says, the president cannot fire a Fed governor without a serious legal reason. Trump loses this battle. But he doesn't stop. He continues to threaten. He talks about replacing Powell himself. He says, if he doesn't lower rates, I'll find someone who will. Wall Street feels the heat. Reporters call it the Trump pressure. And this pressure spreads like a wave. The fear is simple. If the Fed becomes political, it will cut rates to please the president, not to protect the economy. That means cheap money. And cheap money means inflation. Inflation eats savings. It makes paper money weak. And when money becomes weak, people run to gold. gold prices start climbing again. Every speech, every tweet from Trump adds fire to the market. In the news, anchors whisper, "The president's war with the Fed is driving investors to gold." Even small investors begin to worry. They see that the strong dollar is not strong anymore. It's political. It depends on Trump's mood, on his next tweet, on his next fight. So they choose something safer, something older, something that doesn't talk back, gold. By August, gold funds are full. More than $60 billion flow into them in just a few months. And it doesn't stop there. In September alone, investors buy 100 tons of gold. That's more than some countries hold in their national reserves. The world starts to change. The traditional rule, 60% stocks, 40% bonds, is broken. Now analysts talk about a new rule, 60% stocks, 20% bonds, 20% gold. It's a revolution in investment thinking. Mike Wilson, a top strategist at Morgan Stanley, says something that shocks everyone. Gold is now the best protector against chaos. People listen, and they believe him. Back in the White House, Trump stands in front of the mirror. He loves power. But power is starting to slip away. The markets are not listening. They follow fear, not politics. He looks at the camera and says, "I will make America rich again." But outside, the opposite is happening. The dollar shakes, the gold shines brighter, and every word from Trump makes investors run faster toward the metal he hates the most. Ashraf Ibrahim watches from his studio. He says softly to the camera, "When leaders fight the market always wins." He pauses, then adds, "And gold, never forget, is the language of fear." The screen fades to black. The golden numbers rise again. Chapter 3, Fear in the Market. Fear. It moves faster than light. It spreads from one screen to every heart. By late summer 2025, markets around the world were trembling, not because of war, not because of disease, but because of uncertainty. Uncertainty about money itself. Every morning, traders opened their computers with shaking hands. The dollar was down. The stock market was jumping like a nervous horse. And gold? Gold was flying. People said, "It's just a correction." Then they said, "It's just a reaction." But day after day, the price kept climbing. No correction. No stop. Banks called it a global movement. But the truth was simpler. It was fear. Pure human fear. Trump's war with the Federal Reserve didn't calm anyone. Each new speech added smoke to the fire. Investors started thinking, what if the U.S. government can't control its own economy? What if inflation explodes? What if the dollar loses its value? Those what-if questions. They are poison to the market. And poison needs an antidote. For centuries, that antidote has been gold. Money began to flow. Billions of dollars left the stock market and entered gold funds. Safe, silent, shining. Even ordinary people joined the rush. In India, long lines formed outside jewelry stores. In Germany, families bought gold bars for their children. In the Middle East, small shops ran out of coins. And in America, pawn shops had signs, "Gold sold out." The world had one heartbeat, gold. Ashraf Ibrahim spoke on his show that week. He looked straight into the camera and said, "When investors are scared, they don't think, they react." He showed charts of the last 3 months, a golden line rising like a rocket, up, up, up. No one could see the top. He asked, "What will happen if this continues? Will gold become the new dollar?" The audience stayed silent, because nobody knew. Meanwhile, central banks made their move. The big players, China, Russia, India, Turkey, all buying more gold than ever before, more than 1,000 tons every year. That's 1/5 of the world's total gold production. They were building walls of gold, fortresses against a future they no longer trusted. For the first time in history, gold became more valuable in global reserves than the euro. The euro, gone to 3rd place. The message was clear. In uncertain times, trust the metal, not the money. Inside trading rooms, tension was heavy. Screens flashed red and green. Traders shouted. Phones rang. But behind the noise, one emotion ruled: fear. An investor in London said, "I used to sleep well when I owned stocks. Now I can't sleep unless I hold gold." In Tokyo, a young analyst whispered to his boss, "The world doesn't believe in paper anymore." And in New York, a billionaire quietly moved half his fortune into Swiss vaults. No one wanted to risk being late. By September's end, gold had already grown 50% since January. The jump was faster than oil, faster than crypto, faster than anyone predicted. Ashraf summed it up in one line: "The market is no longer rational, it's emotional. And when emotion rules, logic dies." At home, people watched the news with worry. Mothers asked, "Should we buy gold for our children?" Fathers said, "Let's wait. Maybe the price will fall." But the next day, it didn't fall. It rose again. Panic mixed with hope. Hope mixed with greed. And fear stayed in control. Gold was no longer just a metal. It was a mirror, reflecting the world's anxiety, showing its lack of trust. Ashraf ended his program with a question: when fear becomes the market's master, who dares to stop it? He leaned back, looked at the shining chart behind him, and whispered, "The world is buying peace of mind and paying with gold." Chapter 4. The banks join the game. When the rich start buying, it's big. But when governments start buying, it's history. By autumn 2025, the world's biggest players had entered the golden race. They weren't traders. They weren't investors. They were central banks. The same institutions that print money were now spending billions to collect metal. It began quietly. In reports and balance sheets, small changes appeared. Plus 20 tons gold purchased. Then plus 50 tons. Then plus 120 tons. Soon, it wasn't quiet anymore. From Beijing to Moscow, from Ankara to New Delhi, every bank wanted gold. The numbers were shocking. More than 1,000 tons of gold bought every year, 3 years in a row. The world hadn't seen this kind of hunger since the 1970s, the last time inflation ruled the earth. Ashraf Ibrahim looked at the chart on his screen. The yellow line of gold reserves was going straight up. He said slowly, "When the banks that make money stop trusting money, you know something is wrong." He was right. These banks were supposed to hold dollars and euros, but they were switching out of paper into metal. In June 2025, the European Central Bank made a historic statement. It announced that gold had now become the second largest reserve asset in the world, bigger than the euro itself. Only the US dollar was still number one, but even that crown was shaking. Why were the banks doing this? The answer was fear. After the trade wars, the pandemic, and the energy crisis, the world had learned one lesson. No currency is safe forever. Every empire falls, every promise breaks, but gold stays. In Beijing, officials said, "We don't trust the dollar's future." In Ankara, they whispered, "We will protect our sovereignty with gold." In Moscow, the central bank built secret vaults deep underground, rooms full of yellow bars stacked like books of power. Even smaller nations followed. Serbia, Egypt, Uzbekistan, all buying, all hiding. It was like a new silent alliance, the Golden Bloc. Traders started calling it the Great Accumulation. One banker joked, "It's not a market anymore. It's a gold parade." But behind the joke, there was fear. Because when central banks buy, they don't sell next month. They hold for years, decades, generations. And that means less gold in the market, less gold for anyone else. Prices rise faster. Speculators rush in. The circle feeds itself. At Morgan Stanley, analysts changed their advice again. They said, "The era of 2% gold in your portfolio is over. The new normal is 20%. A few laughed. Then the price went up again. No one laughed after that. Gold was no longer just an investment. It was becoming a currency. A second global language beside the dollar. Ashraf explained it in his next episode. Central banks used to hold gold for tradition. Now they hold it for survival. He pointed at a world map glowing gold. America, still rich but divided. Europe, drowning in debt. China, rising but cautious. And in the middle, a silent empire. An empire made of trust and fear, measured not in paper, but in ounces. In July, the World Gold Council made an announcement. 95% of central bank reserve managers plan to increase their gold holdings next year. 95%. Almost everyone. It was the final confirmation. The system itself was changing sides. If the guardians of the dollar were turning to gold, what would the people do next? Ashraf ended the episode with a whisper. The kings are buying the crown. He paused. Maybe they know something. We don't. Outside, the markets were closing, but the world wasn't sleeping. In vaults, in planes, in secret tunnels, bars of gold were moving quietly across continents, and every bar carried the same message. Trust no one. Trust only me. Chapter 5. The Fall of Trust. Trust. It's invisible, but it's everything. Without it, money is just paper, numbers, noise. And in 2025, that trust began to break. It started in Washington. The fight between President Trump and the Federal Reserve was no longer politics. It was a war for control of the dollar, the heart of the world's money. Trump wanted lower interest rates fast. He said, "Let's make America rich again." But the markets heard something else. Danger. Because if the president can push the central bank, then the bank is not independent anymore. And if the bank is not independent, then the system itself can't be trusted. That fear, that tiny crack in confidence, was all it took. In August, rumors spread that Trump might fire Jerome Powell, the man leading the Federal Reserve. No U.S. president had ever done that before. Traders held their breath. Economists warned, if he does this, the world will lose faith in the dollar. Faith. That was the key word. Money lives on faith. People believe it has value. If that belief disappears, everything collapses. Ashraf Ibrahim spoke with a quiet voice that night. He said, "The moment trust dies, gold lives." On the screen behind him, numbers flashed. Gold, $3,950 an ounce. Highest price in history. The camera zoomed in on his face. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "this is not just a market story. This is a story about belief. All over the world, people felt the same fear. They didn't trust politicians. They didn't trust banks. They didn't trust tomorrow. So they trusted what they could touch. Gold coins, bars, jewelry hidden under pillows. In Cairo, a woman sold her car and bought bracelets. In Istanbul, families turned savings into golden coins called liras. In Berlin, people waited in lines for small gold bars. Even in New York, the rich moved their money to Switzerland. It was not about profit anymore. It was about protection. In September, the situation became worse. Trump signed a law called One Page Beautiful. It promised big tax cuts, $4.5 trillion. He called it a gift to the people. But the truth was dangerous. The government had no money to replace what it lost. The plan would add $3.4 trillion in debt by 2034. The markets panicked again. Debt means more printing. More printing means weaker dollars, and weaker dollars mean stronger gold. Then came October, and with it, chaos. The U.S. government shut down. No pay for workers, no new reports, no clarity. 40% of federal employees sent home. America, the world's economic engine, had stopped. Investors were blind. No jobs data. No inflation numbers, no updates. They didn't know what was happening. And when people don't know, they fear. Fear of the unknown is the strongest fear of all. So, again, they ran to gold. The safe place. The only place left. Gold funds reached record highs. In just a few days, billions moved again. The message was clear. If the system stops, the metal stands. Ashraf opened his next show with a calm but heavy tone. He said, "Every empire has a symbol. For America, it was trust. For centuries, the world trusted its money, its system, its promise. But when leaders break that promise, the empire shakes." He looked down, then said, "And in the smoke of fear, the color of gold shines brighter than the color of the flag." At that moment, across the ocean, European and Asian markets were also breaking. Leaders were resigning. New faces, new risks. The storm was no longer American. It was global. And in every capital from Paris to Tokyo, the same question echoed, who can we trust now? Gold didn't answer. It just waited, silent and shining, as people everywhere slowly realized that the system built to protect them was no longer protecting itself. Chapter 6. The Government Shutdown. The 1st of October, 2025. A normal day until the screens went dark. News broke like thunder. The U.S. government has shut down. No one believed it at first, not in America, not anywhere. But it was true. The world's biggest economy had stopped. The reason? A fight, again, in Washington. Republicans and Democrats couldn't agree on how to fund the government. Both sides said, "We are right." Neither moved an inch. And when no one moves, everything stops. Thousands of offices closed. Hundreds of programs frozen. More than 750,000 workers told to go home. No pay, no plan, no peace. For the first time in 7 years, America, the country that others depend on, couldn't pay its own bills. In a quiet house in Virginia, a government worker named Sarah looked at her paycheck app. It said, "Payment delayed." She closed it and sighed. Her rent was due in 3 days. The grocery bill was waiting. Her savings were small. She turned on the TV. The first thing she saw was gold. Again. The price was climbing like a fire on dry grass. Ashraf Ibrahim appeared on screen that night. Behind him, a giant image, U.S. shutdown, markets in fear. He spoke slowly, almost whispering. When the government stops, trust stops. He explained that the shutdown meant more than closed offices. It meant missing data, no reports, no updates, no direction. The market was flying blind. Normally, every first Friday of the month, America publishes its jobs report, a key signal for the economy. But not this time. The agency that prepares it was closed. No jobs data, no inflation numbers, no clue about what was happening inside the machine. And when the machine goes silent, people panic. Investors didn't wait. They ran. Fast. They sold stocks. They bought gold. In just a few days, gold funds saw billions in new money. The safe haven was glowing again. On Wall Street, one trader shouted, "We are in the dark. Give me gold. I don't care the price." In the next few days, the crisis grew. Supermarkets stayed open, but the fear was visible. People spoke softly, like something sacred was breaking. A taxi driver in New York said, "I never thought I'd see this. America closed." Tourists took pictures in front of locked government buildings. Children asked their parents, "Why did our country stop working?" No one had an answer. Inside the White House, the air was thick. Trump was furious. He blamed the Democrats. The Democrats blamed him, and the world blamed both. In the markets, gold hit another record, $4,050 per ounce. Analysts called it the Panic of October. Ashraf called it something else, the price of uncertainty. He said, "Gold doesn't love crisis. It just feeds on fear. And right now, fear is the new currency." Across the ocean, Europe watched closely. The euro was weak, debt was high, France was in political chaos. Germany's economy was slowing down. Even Japan was preparing for a new leader. Every headline added fuel to the golden fire. From Tokyo to Paris, Traders whispered the same thing. All roads now lead to gold. In a small investment office in London, a young analyst looked at his boss and said, "Sir, if the United States can't control its money, then what hope do the rest of us have?" His boss didn't reply. He just stared at the chart, a golden line climbing higher and higher, as if gravity no longer existed. By the end of the week, the world was holding its breath. Would the shutdown end? Would Congress find a deal? No one knew, but one thing was certain. The longer the silence, the louder the gold. Ashraf closed his program that night with a single sentence. The lights of government went out, but the glow of gold still burns. He looked into the camera, eyes heavy but calm. When people lose faith in leaders, they search for something that cannot lie. And for thousands of years, that thing has been gold. Outside his window, the city of Cairo shimmered in the night. Every light, a reminder of trust still alive. But for how long? The world was about to find out. Chapter 7. Chaos in Europe and Asia. October 2025. While America was lost in its shutdown, the storm crossed the ocean. From Tokyo to Paris, from Seoul to Berlin, a wave of confusion swept the world. The markets were already weak, but now leaders were falling too. In Japan, history was made. A woman, strong, cold, and calm, won the leadership of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party. Her name, Sanita Kachi. The media called her the Iron Lady of Japan. She promised to rebuild the economy, to fight deflation, to bring new energy to the nation. But the markets didn't hear energy. They heard spending, and spending means debt. Debt means printing. Printing means inflation. Within hours of her victory, the yen dropped. Gold jumped again. Japan, a country famous for stability, had entered the game of uncertainty. 2 days later, another shock. In France, chaos returned. Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu resigned. Just 26 days after taking office, 14 hours before his resignation, he had proudly announced his new government. 14 hours later, it was gone. He was the 5th prime minister in less than 2 years. Even the French were tired of counting. The news broke at dawn. Paris traders stared at their phones in disbelief. "Another one?" one man whispered. His friend replied, "Oui, another one." The euro fell. The stock market bled red, and gold, once again, smiled. Ashraf Ibrahim, watching from Cairo, said in his program that night, "When politicians fall faster than prices rise, you know the world is in trouble." He showed the headlines one by one. Japan gets new leader. France loses government. Germany's economy slows. Italy's debt grows. Britain still searching for direction. Every title had one effect: another push for gold. Europe's house was shaking. Protests returned to the streets of Paris. Unions demanded money. Students demanded jobs. The government had no answers. In Germany, factories were silent. Exports down. Energy prices high. And in Italy, debt was eating the budget like fire. Every country had its own problem. But together, they had one big problem. Trust. No one trusted the European Central Bank. No one trusted the politicians. No one trusted tomorrow. Ashraf looked directly at the camera and said, "When America coughs, the world catches a cold." But this time, the world already had a fever. His words hit deep, because it was true. While the U.S. was fighting over budgets, Europe was drowning in political storms. Asia was changing its leaders, and the Middle East was preparing for crisis again. Everywhere, tension. In Tokyo, Sana Takachi stood in front of the press. Her voice was firm. "We will act fast," she said. "Our new plan will protect Japan's families." But the next day, the Nikkei index dropped. Investors didn't want promises. They wanted peace. And peace, right now, had only one shape: gold. In Paris, Emmanuel Macron faced his cabinet in silence. He had tried 5 prime ministers, 5, and still nothing worked. He said softly, "France is tired. The people have no more patience." He knew that if the country continued like this, France would lose not only money, but pride. By mid-October, global markets were in chaos. Every continent had its own storm. But they all shared one sky, golden and burning. Analysts stopped using big words. They simply said, "This is not a correction. This is fear." Gold passed $4,100 per ounce, a number that once seemed impossible. Now, it was the new normal. Ashraf ended his report with a quiet voice. "The whole planet is holding its breath. The West is divided. The East is uncertain, and between them stands the metal that never speaks, but always wins." He leaned closer to the microphone. "Every time trust breaks, gold grows. And right now, trust is breaking everywhere." The music faded. The world map behind him turned gold. Chapter 8. The World in Panic. The world was losing control. Every headline screamed fear. Every screen flashed red. And every heart beat faster. The year was not over yet, but the planet already looked exhausted. America was closed. Europe was shaking. Asia was changing. And gold was flying like a bird set free. People didn't talk about profits anymore. They talked about safety. They said, "Forget stocks, forget crypto, forget everything. Just give me gold." Gold became more than a metal. It became a feeling, a symbol, a new religion. In London, bankers whispered about it at midnight meetings. In Dubai, gold shops stayed open all night. In Hong Kong, traders stood in long lines at the airport vaults. Everyone wanted to hold the same thing, a piece of the world's fear. The price passed $4,200, then $4,300. People laughed nervously. "This is crazy," one investor said. But he still bought more, because in panic, logic dies. Ashraf Ibrahim opened his show that night with one sentence. "The market is no longer buying gold. It's buying peace of mind." He showed a chart, a golden curve rising like fire. He said, "In 1 year, gold rose by 50%. Not because of war or disaster, but because of fear itself." He paused. Fear has become a business. In New York, families who had never invested before began to sell their cars, their houses, their savings, just to buy gold coins. Online stores crashed from high demand. Some people paid twice the normal price just to get delivery faster. A man on a financial talk show said, "I don't want profit. I want protection." Another replied, "And what if gold falls?" The man smiled sadly. "Then we fall together." The madness spread everywhere. Even banks began to warn their customers, "Do not panic. Gold cannot rise forever." But no one listened. People weren't thinking. They were feeling. In South Korea, television shows discussed how to hide gold at home. In India, weddings were postponed because jewelry prices were too high. In Egypt, street sellers began offering fake gold bars and still sold them all. It wasn't just a market anymore. It was a movement, a storm, a mirror of human emotion. Meanwhile, central banks kept buying quietly. No interviews, no press, just silent planes carrying gold bars at night. One report said, central banks now own 20% of the world's total gold. 20%. That meant 1/5 of all the gold ever mined was now locked inside government vaults. Ashraf commented, "It's not only the people who are scared. The system itself is scared." He turned off the lights in the studio for a moment. Only the gold chart glowed on the screen behind him. He said softly, "In the dark, only one thing shines, and that thing controls us all." He looked straight into the camera. The world is panicking because the world has lost something deeper than money. It has lost certainty. Everywhere, that truth was visible. In Tokyo, people rushed to buy gold, ATMs, machines that sell small bars. In Paris, jewelry stores were robbed by professionals who stole only gold. In Dubai, businessmen paid in bars instead of cash. And in America, politicians blamed each other, while investors quietly turned their savings into metal. By November, gold reached $4,400. Analysts were speechless. Charts broke. Predictions failed. One expert on CNN said, "This is no longer finance. This is psychology." And he was right. Ashraf ended his episode that night with calm eyes. He said, "Maybe this is not a gold rush. Maybe this is a trust crash." He stood in silence for a few seconds, then added, "Every panic has a limit. But no one knows where this one will stop." The music rose, slow, haunting. On the screen, a golden globe spinning. And under it, one line of text appeared. "In the age of fear, gold is king." Chapter 9. The Final Question. The sun was rising over a golden world. A quiet, heavy silence filled the air. The numbers on the screens were no longer just numbers. They were history. Gold stood at $4,900 an ounce. A record, a warning, a mirror. The world had never seen anything like it. Ashraf Ibrahim sat in his studio before the cameras turned on. His notes were ready, but his mind was not. He whispered to himself, "How did we get here?" From Washington to Tokyo, from Paris to Cairo, from banks to living rooms, everyone was asking the same question. Was this safety or madness? When the program started, Ashraf spoke slowly, as if each word carried weight. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "the price of gold has reached levels experts once called impossible. Some predict it will soon pass $5,000, but no one knows what comes next. He paused, then continued, "The world is no longer running toward opportunity. It's running away from fear." He explained how everything had connected like falling dominoes. Trump's battle with the Fed, the shutdown, the chaos in Europe, the fear in Asia. Each event pushed the next. Each fear created another. And gold, Ashraf said, became the only thing people believed in. Because they stopped believing in everything else. In a small cafe in Berlin, an old economist stirred his coffee and smiled sadly. "I have seen this before," he said, "in the 1970s, in 2008, in every crisis. When the world panics, it hides in gold. But when the fear fades, the metal falls like a stone." His friend asked, "So, should we sell?" The old man shook his head. "Sell? Number. But remember, gold is not peace. It's just a pause." Back in Cairo, Ashraf read new reports from Goldman Sachs. They had just raised their forecast $4,900 by the end of 2026. Their reason: global uncertainty and central bank demand. He read the next line out loud. If just 1% of U.S. bondholders move their money into gold, the price could pass $5,000. The camera zoomed in. Ashraf's eyes narrowed. 1%, he whispered. 1% could change everything. But not everyone was happy. In New York, a young couple sat at their kitchen table. They had bought gold when it was $4,300. Now they watched the price dance, up, down, up again. They looked at each other, nervous. "Are we safe?" the woman asked. The man didn't answer. He didn't know. Because now, gold wasn't just money, it was emotion, fear, hope, pride, confusion. All melted together. Ashraf said it best. When people buy gold, they are really buying time. Time to think, time to breathe, time to believe the world won't collapse tomorrow. He leaned closer to the microphone. But time, my friends, is the most expensive metal of all. As days passed, the panic slowly turned to silence. Markets didn't crash, but they didn't heal either. Everyone waited for someone else to make the next move. And in that stillness, one question filled the air. What now? If gold is at its highest, can it still go higher? If everyone already bought, who is left to buy? What happens when the fear ends? Or when the fear becomes normal? Ashraf looked directly into the camera for the final words of his season. The lights dimmed. The gold chart glowed behind him. He said, "The world has chosen gold as its protector. But remember, the same fire that gives light can also burn." He paused for a long moment, then asked, "If you had $10,000 today, would you start a business, or would you buy gold?" He smiled softly. "That's not an economic question anymore. It's a question of faith." The music rose, slow, powerful, emotional. A deep narrator's voice joined in. In every age, the world finds something to believe in. Sometimes it's kings, sometimes it's gods, sometimes it's gold. The sound faded. Only the echo remained. Trust is the true currency.